Good morning and welcome to this Licensing Act Subcommittee on the 9th of June 2022. This subcommittee has been called to determine an application for a new premises licence for the boathouse at 42 Cross Street, Sudbury. The procedure we will follow is that following some preliminary administrative type matters to be dealt with, the hearing proper will be dealt with by way of an informal round the table hearing. The proceedings will start with the licensing officer summarising the report to the subcommittee for their consideration. There will be an option to ask questions if there's any clarification needed on what's been presented. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present their case to the subcommittee. And again, that may be followed by questions for any clarification matters. Following that, if there is an objector in attendance, they may then make their oral representation based on their written representation, and questions again may be asked. Then there will be a brief summing up. The members may have some final questions, and the applicant will have the final say before the subcommittee go into a private session to determine the application. So I shall go on to the election of chair. As we have the chair for the full Licensing and Regulatory Committee, that's Councillor Lee Parker. He will be chairing this subcommittee this morning, and I now hand over to you, Councillor Parker, to take proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLu, and good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to YouTube and will be capable of repeated viewing. The meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Now, I've got some housekeeping items, if we can be mindful as well. Please ensure that microphones are muted when you're not speaking, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt, you may be asked to leave. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by the chair. Please await your turn. So moving on to item 3, apologies for absence. Can I ask the governance officer to give any apologies for absence, please?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. And declaration of interest by councillors, again to the governance officer. Are there any declarations of interest?
None from me.
And Councillor Nunn, any declarations of interest?
No.
Excellent. OK, so what I'm going to do now is just make some introductions, starting off with the members of the subcommittee, if I can. Starting with myself, my name is Lee Parker, Councillor Lee Parker. I'll be chairing the subcommittee this morning, and then moving on to our vice chair, Councillor Carpendale.
Yeah, good morning, Councillor Sue Carpendale. I am vice chair of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee.
Thank you. And Councillor Nunn.
Councillor John Nunn, Babergh District Councillor.
Good job. And then if I can introduce the officers that are in attendance as well, starting with our legal advisor, please.
Yeah, Nigel DeLu, legal advisor to the subcommittee this morning. Thank
you. And then our licensing officers, please, starting with Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Green, licensing officer.
Thank you.
Catherine Sanders, licensing officer.
Thank you. And then our governance officer, please.
Good morning, Karen Sayer, governance officer.
Thank you very much. And then in the background, we do have another governance officer with us as well, Mandy Smith, who is operating the IT and running the YouTube for us in the background. Good morning, Mandy, as well. So now, if I can, I'm going to ask the applicant, please, to introduce yourselves. And if you're represented, ask your representative to make the introductions, please, Mr. Brown.
Hi, yeah, my name's Darren Pratt, licensee at the Boathouse in Sudbury, 42 Cross Street, and I'll hand you over to Nigel.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Nigel Dermott. I'm a licensing consultant assisting with this application today, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you, gents. Thank you very much. And can I ask you please both to confirm receipt of procedure, report and copies of the relevant notice? You confirm that you've received those, please.
Correct, sir.
Yes, we have, yes.
Super job. Now, Karen, can you tell us, have we got anybody else with us as yet? I know we were waiting for anybody else to be with us.
No, there's nobody else arrived in the meantime.
Okay, all right. In which case we'll we'll crack on. I'll just ask if any party, that'll be the applicant here in this case, as any party to the hearing wishes to withdraw either their application or their representation. Mr. Pratt, can you just confirm whether you wish to withdraw either your application?
Sorry, no, I don't. Sorry, I apologise.
That's all right. No
I'm
trouble.
a little bit nervous to say that.
Yeah, you and me both. There's no problem. Okay, so I've got some questions to the licensing officer, please. Catherine, have there been any requests from the parties for permission to call witnesses?
No, Chair.
Excellent. And have the parties indicated they wish to present documentary or other material?
No, Chair.
Super job. Thanks very much. Okay, so Mr. Pratt and Mr. Dermott, back to yourselves. Could I ask you please to estimate the time you think you might require to present your case and ask questions of any other parties to the hearing?
Good morning, Chair. Yes, I think possibly it's going to take me just about 15 minutes just to cover the report, which I hope you've got receipt of, together with two appendices, Appendix A and Appendix B. It's unfortunate that some of the residents are here because I was hoping that we might have allayed some of their concerns with some of the offers that we're making subsequent to our application. Can we just confirm there's nobody here present who's made a representation, including the planning officers?
Yeah, if we can do that, please, Karen, as governance officer.
I can confirm there are no other parties present at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dermott. I mean, obviously that might change. We might have somebody who comes in a little while, sort of thing. But at the moment, it's just us. So
we've got nothing to hide and no objections to people joining later.
Jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so moving on then to item number 5, the hearing itself. So please, if I could ask the licensing officer to present the report B/LA sub/22/1 and to summarise the matter under consideration, please, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. This hearing is to determine an application made for the grant of a new premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 by Darren Pratt in relation to the premises The Boathouse, 42 Cross Street, Sudbury. The application was received by the Licensing Authority on the 13th of April 2022, and a copy of this is attached to this report as Appendix A. The application made has been subject to the statutory consultation period as prescribed by regulation. The notices advertising the application have been on display at the premises and published in the East Anglian Daily Times 28th of April 2022 edition. Full details of the proposed activities and timings are contained within the application form attached as Appendix A to this report. The operating schedule steps proposed by the applicant to promote the 4 licensing objectives are listed as Appendix B to this report. A hearing is necessary to determine the application following receipt of 10 representations which have not been withdrawn. The subcommittee will be aware that its consideration is confined to promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, and the need or commercial demand for licensed premises are not considerations for the licensing authority when discharging its licensing functions. In carrying out its licensing functions, the licensing authority must have regard to its statement of licensing policy published under Section 5 of the Act and any guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182. The licensing authority must carry out its functions under the Act with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Where revisions are made to the legislation or guidance issued by the Secretary of State, there may be a period of time when the local statement of licensing policy is inconsistent with these revisions. In these circumstances, the licensing authority will have regard and give appropriate weight to the relevant changes, guidance, and its own statement of licensing policy. The subcommittee will also be aware of the Human Rights Act 1998 considerations, specifically Article 6 for the applicant and Articles 8 and 1 of Protocol 1 for those raising representations when determining applications for the grant of a new licence. The Licensing Authority has received one representation from responsible authorities under the Licensing Act 2003. This is attached as Appendix C to the report. After mediation between an officer from Babergh District Council's Environmental Protection Team, the applicant has agreed to amend Part M conditions, and this is attached as Appendix F. There has been 9 representations received made by other persons, which includes local residents, businesses and residents associations, and this is attached as Appendix D to this report. To notify the subcommittee members, 2 representees did withdraw their representations initially. However, this was due to misunderstanding the revised operating schedule. Therefore, the representations have been readmitted into the hearing paperwork. The subcommittee must, having regard to the representations made, take such of the steps, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To grant the licence, subject to conditions which are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application, modified to such extent as the authority considers appropriate for promotion of the licensing objectives, and subject to any mandatory conditions which must be included in the licence. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as premises supervisor, or to reject the application. For these purposes, conditions of the licence are modified if any of them are altered or omitted or any new condition is added. Any party aggrieved by the decision taken by the licensing authority in respect of this application has a statutory right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court. And that concludes my submission, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. OK, so I'm obliged to ask any parties, if any parties to the hearing have any questions of the licensing officer at this point. So I'm going to direct that question straight to yourself, Mr. Dermott. Have you got any questions that you wish to ask?
Not at this stage, sir. I'll save that for our presentation.
Thank you, sir. And then I will ask the same question of the subcommittee. So starting with Councillor Carpenter, do you have any questions to the licensing officer?
Just a couple briefly, please, Chair. We recognise there are a number of changes. We'll perhaps come back to that later. There's a mention, clearly some of the concerns are about noise levels, and I note that there's been an agreement about noise levels. Can I just ask who has been involved in that discussion and how those noise levels for the music might be monitored? Do we know that?
I believe the conversations occurred with our environmental protection officer.
And that's they've been talking to Mr. Pratt and they seem to have come to an agreement?
I believe so, Councillor, but it may be a better question for Mr. Pratt.
Indeed. OK, we'll come to that in due course. Thank you. Thank you. It's my question.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nunn, do you have any questions to the licensing officer?
Nothing at this stage.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Mr. Dermott, I acknowledge that you just put your hand up there, but we'll return again, sir, after your representation, if we can. So, OK, we'll so long as there's no other questions to the licensing officer, we'll move on and ask the applicant or their representative to present your case, sir, please. The applicant may call witnesses if given permission by the subcommittee, but that's not the case here this morning. So we just ask you to present your case, sir, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I might be able to cover the question by the councillor straight off, insofar as this application relates to premises where there is already in place a premises licence. On that current licence, there are a number of conditions that we left out because we currently felt that they were disproportionate and unnecessary, but through dialogue with the environmental health, we've agreed to reinstate those conditions onto our application, notwithstanding that each application needs to be judged on its own merit. I think that the environmental health officers do speak with experience of this type of business operating at this location. So therefore we agreed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dennett.
Okay, if I may carry on then, please.
Please.
So as I've already outlined, we've already got a premises licence, which is enabling us to operate at the moment. And before making the application, we consulted with the police regarding our intentions, and they made a few comments, and we've taken those into account when making our application. During the process of making the application, officers for the licensing authority did give us some advice with regards to the application, and I think that was with good intentions. This is not intended as a criticism. They asked us to apply from the opening hours until the end of our intended regulated music, so that it didn't give the impression we were starting music at 11 o'clock at night. That seemed to make common sense, but I think perhaps some of the local residents might have the impression that we're going to be playing live and recorded music all day long from 10 o'clock at night until the end of our initial application. We were also asked to add a drinking up time to our opening hours, which we were quite happy to manage from within the hours that we were requesting. But we don't want to work against the licensing officers, so we took their advice and include that. But I think you'll find that later on I've got an appendix of suggested amended hours, and that should cover that matter. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to read to my report, because sometimes I feel reports can come across a little bit cold, a little bit clinical, and some of the facts within that report might need some clarification by your good selves in determining this application. And just because the planning officer and residents are not here does not mean to say that we underestimate the value of their contribution to this process. In fact, we're very mindful of it, and I think you'll find as we go through this report that we've taken some of their concerns into account. So both of these matters that were raised by licensing officers, I think, have affected representations, but at the end of the 28-day consultation, you will see we've got no representations made by the police, and they're primarily the people concerned with crime and disorder. Matters that were raised by environmental health officers have been fully addressed, and we've satisfied environmental health officers that through the inclusion of a few suggested additional conditions that the licensing objectives will be promoted. And actually they did make comment that they have confidence in the fact that if things don't go quite according to plan, that they always have the review mechanism that they can fall back on. So that was quite comforting from the point of view of an applicant. Therefore, other than a brief representation made on behalf of the planning authority, no other responsible authority has made any representation. But a number have been made by local residents, and we're mindful of that. And I've included a few suggested additional conditions that might address some of their concerns, not least amending some of our hours that we've applied for. The application, although we've got an existing premises licence, the application is made primarily with the intention of distancing ourselves from anything that might have gone beforehand at these premises. It seems quite clear in reading the current premises licence that there might have been some criminal activities going on in the past that have led to negotiations between the police and the licence holder then, which has resulted in adding SIA door staff wearing reflective clothing, the requirement of policies, numerous policies, must be about 10 different policies, searching toilets, recording that every hour, and to be honest, quite a lot of conditions that, as far as we're concerned, as current operators, are not proportionate and not necessary. And because of the impact that that would have in respect of the application, we decided to make a new grant application rather than a full variation, which meant that Mr. Pratt can create his own history at this particular venue and start afresh. So that is the intention of this new grant application. As you're probably aware, the hospitality trade has been particularly hard hit during the pandemic, and Mr. Pratt is aware of the increased trend for people to remain in the UK for annual holidays. He has been and still is a resident in Sudbury, and has been a resident in Sudbury for over 30 years, and he's got close connections in the area. And focusing now on his eventual retirement through the operation of this business, He therefore has a vested interest in developing and maintaining good local relationships. With that in mind, Mr. Pratt wished to apply for slightly more extended hours. This is a beautiful location, right on the edge of the river. I also holiday in Suffolk myself, and it is a very enjoyable space to holiday in. Albeit there have been some representations made by residents, and I'll cover that just shortly. To date, it should be noted that there, regardless of what may or may not have gone on at these premises, there has never been an application to review any licence. And I understand that if this licence is granted today, this will be the third premises licence held since the commencement of the Licensing Act 2003. Just to clarify as well, Babergh District Council public records show that Mr. Pratt was transferred onto the licence in January 2019. I don't know what date you have before you, but in fact, Mr. Pratt has only been the premises licence holder transferred to him on the 11th of March of this year. So he has only been at these premises for 3 months. Mr. Pratt does make this application on the basis that each application should be considered on its own merit, and as I've already covered, environmental health based their comments on the experience of running this type of business at this location, which seemed not unreasonable. In a very brief submission that was made by the Planning Authority in respect of live and recorded music, we highlighted that regulated entertainment refers only to live and recorded music that's played after 11 p.m. and before 8 a.m. And that was deregulated by the Live Music Act of 2012, and that has since been amended. That part of the licence, therefore, cannot be conditioned or hours changed unless there is a review application before the subcommittee, and we're not aware of any review application ever having been made before the committee. The planning officer's comments and those of local residents, we have reviewed the position in respect of regulated entertainment in our appendix B, where I look at hours, and I shall refer to that very shortly. With regard to the planning officer's recommendations suggested restricted hours relating to the sale of alcohol, there is no such recommendation in respect of late night refreshments. So he recommends that alcohol cease at 11 o'clock, and we're asking for late night refreshments until 1 o'clock, and he makes no objection. There is no evidence that's been presented by the planning officer and no theoretical framework provided in support of that recommendation, despite the fact that we have requested on a couple of occasions comment from the planning officer. We've never heard from the planning officer. There is no evidence that this application, if you are of a mind to grant it, will increase any crime and disorder. The police make no representations. The business I would highlight is predominantly a restaurant with bed and breakfast facilities. And the police have made no representations. Although we've made an FOI request, we've not had a response from Suffolk Police. But I have been able to obtain crime statistics from the police.uk website, which shows that since 2019, there has been no recorded crime in this area since 2019, albeit we know that during that time it's been rather quiet. It should be noted there is no recorded crime. And the statistics on that website are drawn straight from the Home Office recording system. Okay, so Mr. Pratt, I've known him for quite a number of years, but he has been a licence holder for 30 years, operating mainly in the Chelmsford City area and to a lesser extent over in Ipswich. He is an experienced hotelier, a bar owner and restaurateur. And during those years, Mr. Pratt has never himself faced any application to review any licence that he's been named on. In Chelmsford, he did actually achieve, one of his premises, he did achieve the Best Bar None Award, which is a Home Office scheme that supports best practice. It's not found very frequently. I don't think there are any in Suffolk, but it is held up as best practice by the Home Office. And Mr. Pratt has hosted the local pub watch meetings for over 20 years, and is a very active participant of the group. Therefore, he's no stranger to the promotion of the licensing objectives and is quite aware of his responsibilities. He also employs my services. I'm a crime scientist with the Jill Dando Institute, and I approached issues in a structured problem-solving way, using exactly the same problem-solving model as used by the local police. As it also happens, I'm a former officer in charge of the Underwater Search Unit and therefore able to advise Mr Pratt at this particular location in respect of water safety, and I have done so. And you'll also note that the primary responsible authority in respect of that would normally be the fire service, and they've made no representations in respect of public safety at this location right on the edge of the river. The ability to make off-sales is already extended by the Business and Planning Act of 2020, even though that is temporary and it comes to an end at the end of September. However, we've further amended our operating schedule at Appendix A to meet the concerns of local residents, and we do so voluntarily. Following similar advice to add drinking up time by the licensing officer, this may have given the impression to be open longer than we perhaps had initially intended, and therefore we've amended our hours so that we manage drinking up within whatever times you consider are appropriate for this business. We are not referring to any specific representation made by any local resident. It's our intention to work with local residents and not single anybody out. But we do make comment with regard to some of the overall themes that have been made by some of the representations, and we don't undermine the strength of feeling behind some of those. And therefore, I'd just like to comment on some of the matters that they have raised. Firstly, with the exception of New Year's Eve, we have withdrawn any request for hours in respect of regulated entertainment in terms of music, with no expectation, obviously, that conditions should be applied for an activity that has not been applied for or authorised by the licence. With regret, whilst the applicant is also mindful of some of the local wildlife issues, this is not a matter within the scope of the licensing objectives and therefore not a matter for this application. That doesn't mean to say that he's not concerned about wildlife, it's just not a matter for licensing. Mr Pratt offers some further conditions in the light of some of the comments by local residents with the intention of satisfying them with his intentions in respect of off-sales. Presently, it's permitted under the Business and Planning Act 2020. There are no intended sales as if we were operating like a corner shop. This is merely to provide an additional service from 8 o'clock in the morning to residential guests, and rather than encourage people to drink up and then drive home, to be able to reseal a bottle of wine and take half a bottle that's undrunk, take that home with them, and therefore that would be for consumption off the premises and fall within the scope of an off-sale. The smells from the extractor fans are a matter really that should be referred to the environmental services if it's considered a statutory nuisance, and no representation was made by the environmental health in respect to that matter, and no complaints that we can establish have been received. Again, we've done an FOI request in respect of complaints for noise and any other public nuisance of Babergh Council. We've had no response to that request. We include a further condition in our amended conditions at Appendix A to satisfy representations of residents that's where they have concern that people might migrate from Sudbury, come into their premises late at night and continue drinking. That is most certainly not something that we would encourage. And in order to do that, you'll see that we've suggested a condition there that we would have no admissions after 11 o'clock, apart from those that have left the premises for smoking. The licence holder is taking from myself advice in respect of water safety. There's no evidence that those attending this restaurant are any more likely to be at risk from the river than anybody else who might be boating or otherwise enjoying leisure activities in the area. In fact, I believe that there was a recent incident where somebody unfortunately was drowned, but it's in no way connected with our premises. Do you know? No. It is predominantly a restaurant, and it's not a city centre bar, and it's not being operated as such. Mr Pratt tries to maintain an open dialogue with local residents. It's early days. I think sometimes they're reluctant to come forward because they don't know what sort of reception they're going to receive. but that seems to be working quite well on a very slow basis. Not as a condition, but Mr. Pratt is happy to hold regular meetings with residents in order to listen to and address any of their concerns. In fact, Mr. Pratt offered such a meeting ahead of the Jubilee celebrations, and you'll see there's an additional document that's been added to this hearing relating to that weekend, and I'll cover that in 2 seconds. So that really is my presentation. You will see that we have at Appendix A, we have amended our operating schedule that shows not only the agreed additional conditions with environmental health, but we also offer 3 further conditions following representations made by other persons, i.e. local residents. And at Appendix B, further to meet some of those concerns, you'll see that we've amended some of our hours, notwithstanding the fact that we already have a premises licence that gives us the majority of these hours. And I can discuss the different hours that we have on the current premises licence at the moment, but as I covered at the beginning, each application really should be considered on its own merit. I think at this particular stage, I will very briefly sum up later on, but it doesn't look like I'm going to have any questions from anybody. I might take some questions from yourself and then just very briefly sum up our position. And I thank you for your time, Chair.
Excellent, and we thank you for your time, Mr. Dermott. It's a very fluent and to the point presentation. Thank you very much. So, as you quite rightly say, there now is the opportunity for us to go around the table and have questions asked of you. Obviously, we only have the the subcommittee with us this morning. I suspect, Mr. Dermott, there will be some questions to ask you to clarify, particularly around those amendments that you just mentioned, just so that we can have some absolute clarity. If I may, I just ask probably our legal officer herself, Mr. DeLu. I noticed that you mentioned in your presentation, Mr. Dermott, about the licence being transferred only this year, but in the application it says 2019. Is there anything that we need to draw at all from that? Is that okay? It's just an inaccuracy, Mr. DeLu. Yeah, there's no issues there.
That may be a question better for the licensing officer, Chair.
Yeah. Fine.
I presume it is probably just now, but Catherine might be able to clarify.
Fine. Yes, please, Catherine, if you will.
Thank you, Chair. It seems that it's reflecting incorrectly on the web, but it's definitely on our system, and that the dates that Mr. Dermott put forward are the correct dates. So,
excellent. Thank you very much for the clarification. Thank you. Right. OK, so let's go around the licensing subcommittee if we can then. And if we start perhaps with Councillor Carpendale, do you have any questions to ask of Mr. Dermott, please?
If I may, thank you, Chair. Just thank you for that very helpful presentation. Covered a lot of the points. Because of the number of additional conditions and so on that you've agreed to and offered, it would help me enormously if we could just look at the application itself and perhaps annotate the document that we have to show any new timings where they might have changed. Could you do that for me? On the full report, for example, it starts on page 18 where you have some entries. Is that something you can do for me?
Just give me 2 seconds, madam, while I find that.
Thank you.
Albeit, I think actually referring to our Appendix B is probably easier reading than the application form.
Yes. I was hoping that I didn't want to annotate my own report and for some reason get it wrong. So I thought if I could have your confirmation, okay, it would really help me.
Page 18, madam.
It starts at E, which is live music. Is there any change there at all?
Yes, we are suggesting that we do not need live music. This is one that the licensing officers advised us to put from 10 till 23:59, when in fact live music in terms of regulated entertainment only starts at 11. My first submitted application said from 2300 until 23:59 to cover that additional hour. But I do accept the view of the licensing officers that it might have given the impression we were starting music at 11 o'clock at night, but legally regulated music only starts at 11 o'clock. But we've decided, we've listened to the residents, we've decided we withdraw that, and any need that we have for live or recorded music, we can fulfil that need within the hours before 11 o'clock.
Okay, so I could put 2300 hours there rather than
You can remove that entirely, madam.
Oh, okay, lovely.
As you also can for section F, because this applies to live music and recorded music. If you are aware, premises that have got an on licence do not need any further permissions for live and recorded music between 8 AM and 11 PM, and to have that amplified if need be.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we can withdraw that. Lovely. Very helpful.
G&H I'm not applied for.
Sorry, can I just go for clarification here for E and F? Yep, the timings are all removed, but I believe that the seasonal variations remain.
Sorry,
the seasonal variations.
Sorry, yes, sir, you are absolutely right. I overlooked that. The only time we would want regulated entertainment would be New Year's Eve until New Year's Day until 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
The existing licence, and in Appendix B, we've actually asked for Christmas Eve as well as New Year's Eve until 2 o'clock. On the existing licence, the authority goes until 2:30. So we've reduced even from the existing licence on that matter.
But you still want the Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve until 2 o'clock.
Good, thank you. The late night refreshment you've dealt with, you've covered that, I think.
Late night refreshment, we have, I think, let me just make sure that I haven't changed any of the hours. Monday to Thursday until we've reduced that by 30 minutes. So we've reduced that Monday to Thursday until midnight.
Yeah.
And on Friday and Saturday, it's the same. It's the same as applied for till 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then on the Sunday, we've actually. Can I rewind on that, madam? I'm looking at the hours for alcohol. So late night refreshment, Monday to Thursday. The original licence, the licence we have at the moment goes till 5 o'clock in the morning. We ask for until midnight.
Yeah. Okay.
Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
1 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, and 23:30 on the Sunday. So on the Sunday night, where a concern has been raised by a local resident that enjoys the peace and quiet of a Sunday, we've pulled that back from midnight till 11:30.
Lovely, thank you.
But the definitive answers are at Appendix B, madam.
Yeah. As I said, I just want.
I appreciate you going through the process. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to be absolutely clear for you.
Yeah.
Alcohol consumption, yes. Okay, I think that's my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, just to come in again briefly on that one, just for clarification, I understand it's for indoors only as well on that, so that'll be the other change to that page.
Late night refreshment, indoors only, so yes.
Oh, indeed, yes.
We don't intend using the terrace at that time of the night because it increases noise.
So indoors only, right. Okay, and J, item J on page 23, that stays as is.
J, the supply of alcohol, madam, just to confirm.
Yeah.
Supply of alcohol till midnight, Monday to Thursday, till 1 o'clock Friday and Saturday, and I've got midnight here on a Sunday, but really I think it's half an hour more than our application. So I think even that should be amended to come back to 2,300 hours.
So we're going to stick with 2,300 hours.
2,300, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise I'm asking for more hours. That would probably not be legal because that's not what was consulted on.
Okay.
Less hours is okay, more hours probably isn't.
And this remains at both?
Yeah.
On and off, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Obviously the seasonal variations throughout. So.
Sure.
Sorry, madam, thank you.
So you've got New Year's Day again on section L. Were you wanting to add Christmas Eve on that one as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And the hours open to the public?
Hours open to the public, whilst it's not a licensable activity in itself, Monday through to Thursday, we have reduced that back to midnight.
Okay, Monday, Thursday to midnight.
And on Friday and Saturday, again, what we've done is we've taken that half hour suggested by the licensing officers for drinking up, and we'll manage that within the time or times that you may choose to grant us. But that will be back to 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And then on the Sunday until 23:30.
Good. Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you. We appreciate the efforts that you've made to accommodate the objections. I just wanted to make quite sure that I knew what the definitive hours requests were. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Councillor Carbondale, and yeah, I echo your comments at the end there as well. Councillor Nunn, do you have any additional questions at this time?
Yes, because of its riverside location, can you tell me what health and safety measures are in place?
If you refer to the plans, you will see there that there are life belts situated along the curtilage of the premises. There is a safety boat nearby because they do offer some limited boating at some stage. So there is a safety boat nearby as well as a long reach pole.
And a big picket fence.
And quite a high picket fence. So it's not the type of scenario that you might be thinking of where young children might accidentally slip into the water. The picket fence is quite high, would easily cater for quite young children and older.
Okay, thank you very much.
And possibly adults as well.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Nothing else at this stage, Councillor Nunn? No?
No.
Okay, sir. So, if I can, please, Mr. Dermott, I'll just a small piece, just something that you just said there, or a response that you gave to Councillor Carpendale with regards to the drinking up. You said that you will manage the drinking up time. Can you just be a bit more specific around what that means? But how will you manage it?
Sure. Well, the addition, it depends on how many people are on the premises. So the additional 30 minutes that licensing officers suggested we add to the opening times, we've reduced that by 30 minutes. We will manage our times so that we're closed at the time we say we will close, and we will manage customers to ensure that they have either consumed, rebottled if it's a bottle of wine, rather than force them to drink and jump into a car and drive away. So that's what we mean by manage, to manage it, because drinking up really isn't a licensable activity. And this is a predominantly, it's a restaurant with a small bar, so you can have pre-drinks, after dinner drinks, and it's got residential premises above. The last people we would want to upset, although we don't want to upset anybody, the last people we would want to upset are our own customers, which are directly above the premises. That would not be good business from our point of view. So this is what we mean about managing drinking up time, so that the licensing objectives are not being undermined, they're being promoted, together with all the signage about leaving quietly and respectfully for the local residents, etc.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. That answers that succinctly. Thank you. And then just another piece that you mentioned in your submission, Mr. Dermott. You said that you'd made an FOI request to Suffolk Police, and I guess that was an FOI request in respect of crime numbers, was it?
Yes,
yeah.
right.
Okay. But okay, that's fine.
Yeah, as we also made an FOI request of Babergh Council for complaints of noise and any other statutory nuisance that might be alleged to be committed, but we've heard nothing.
Okay, all right, noted. Thank you very much. Right, okay, so
before you move on, can I just mention the matter of the additional document that you were served with yesterday?
Yeah, well, actually, yes,
the noise.
please, yeah, please
noise
do.
And music, because I think the applicant is quite concerned that some of the accusations that are made against him, he does strive to be a responsible operator. In fact, I don't know if you can see it. I can't. Can you see that?
I mean,
that is an abstract of the setting of the alarm system, and I can read to that. So we can show that on Friday, the alarm system was fully activated and the premises were cleared. It wasn't very busy, albeit it was Jubilee weekend. It wasn't very busy. They were off the premises by 20 past 11. So they would have stopped the music, cleared up, tidied up well before that. And in fact, my information is that music was turned off by 10 o'clock. And so therefore, what I'm saying is I think some of the music that may have been heard at that time of the night was probably resulting from some of the private parties, private events that were going on in the local area. And the same on Saturday. In fact, Saturday was even quieter and the alarm system was already fully set and armed by 11:15. So Mr. Pratt totally refutes any allegation that there was music being played beyond 11 o'clock. But just clearing that up for your information, sir. Yeah,
no, I appreciate that, Mr. Dermott. Obviously, I suppose it's one of those scenarios that unless we are all present, it's difficult to argue either way. But I appreciate your comments.
Absolutely. Just to a certain degree, we can evidence what time we left the premises, sir.
Okay, sir. All right. Thank you. And I think you know, therein lies the nub of things, doesn't it, with regards to the representations from the local residents and what have you. But that'll be within our considerations when we deliberate outside of this meeting, Mr. Dermott. Thank you. But right, sir. So I do still need to ask if our licensing officer, Catherine, do you have any questions to ask of the applicant at this stage?
I do, Chair, yes, if that's okay.
Yes, of course, please.
Just for some clarification, please, if I may, Mr. Dermott. With regards to live music, you've stated now that you'd like to add Christmas Eve. What timing is that the same timing as for New Year's Eve?
It is, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. And is that the same for recorded music?
It is, yeah. Live and recorded music, amplified and unamplified.
Okie dokie. With regards to the late night refreshment, are you planning on having that for Christmas Eve as well?
Yes.
Yeah, until 2?
Yes, please.
Okay. Right. The other question was late night refreshment Monday to Thursdays finishing at midnight, but your opening hours are until midnight. That seems to be you're closing before your permitted licensable hours finish.
Let me just double check on that one.
Okay.
That could well be a typo. Sorry, what are you saying there, Catherine?
So you're stating now that your opening hours are from until midnight, but your late night refreshment hours Monday to Thursday until midnight. So effectively, it looks like you're closing before you've finished your permitted late night refreshment hours.
I think given that opening hours are not a licensable activity, we would ask for the opening hours, therefore, to be adjusted in line with the late night refreshments.
Okay, so it would be back to half past.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's fine.
That doesn't mean it would be open the full time. It's just
that's fine. Sorry, it was just for clarification, and also for the seasonal variations, and presumably Christmas Eve then would be till 2 o'clock as well.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, that's all I needed to ask, Jeff.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Catherine. That's good spot. Thank you. And thank you for the clarification, Mr. Dermot, as well. Right. OK. Is there anything from the question that Catherine has just asked? Is there anything that the subcommittee members have to ask as a result of those questions at all? No. OK, thank you very much indeed. OK, in which case then we have asked those questions. We don't have a responsible authority present. As far as I can tell, governance officer, we still don't have any other persons present. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Okie dokie. All right. In which case we will go to the closing submissions then. So I will ask the licensing officer, Catherine, if you wish to give a closing statement or to summarise any points which need clarity.
No, I think I've summarised everything that I needed to, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And the same question to the applicant in that case, Mr. Dermot. Do you have any desire to give a closing statement?
I think actually I've probably covered our application in full. The only 2 points that I would like to emphasise is the deregulation of music issue. There can be no controls in accordance with section 177 other than through a review. And also the representation made by the planning officer, whose objection is made on the basis of residential amenity. That is a planning objective, it is not a licensing objective, and there's actually a stated case of Blackwood v Birmingham Magistrates and Birmingham City Council that refers to that particular matter, where hours and conditions have not been set by the planning permission. And it's unfortunate that the planning officer wasn't here, because he or she could have clarified that for us.
Mr. Dermot, can I just, because Mr. DeLue, our legal officer, has indicated he just wants to speak, and I suspect on that point. So
Sure.
Could you come in there, Nigel, please?
Actually, Chair, no, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit further than that. On the seasonal variations, looking at Appendix B and looking at the Christmas Eve edition, you've asked for the Christmas Eve till 2 a.m. for the supply of alcohol, but under B and C, the recorded music and the live music, it refers to New Year's Eve only on that. Can you clarify that is the case?
I think I did clarify at some point during
Yeah,
the testimony
I think
having that New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve. I think that was an omission on my part. I do apologise, sir.
Right, okay, thank you. So you're only asking for the Christmas Eve for the alcohol, and you're not looking for the music on.
And not looking for what, sir?
And not looking for recorded music or live music on Christmas.
No, we're looking for live and recorded music, late night refreshments and alcohol till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay,
Please.
so that's an omission from your Appendix B then?
It is, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. DeLue, for that. Yeah, that's grand. So apologies, Mr. Dermot. So I've noted your comments with regards to the comments from the planning officer. So I've taken those on board. Is there anything else that you wish to add in your closing submission?
I think our submission was full and fairly thorough, sir.
All right, sir. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Okay. In which case, on the basis that the subcommittee considers that the public interest in excluding the public outweighs the public interest in its deliberation being held in public, it is resolved that under section 100A, section 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12 of the Act, on the grounds set out in Regulation 14(2) of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005. And I'll need a member of the subcommittee to second that motion, please.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Nunn, you're in agreement?
Yes.
Excellent. In which case we will, for the purposes of Mr. Pratt and Mr. Dermot present, we will now stop the live stream and retire to a private Teams meeting with our legal advisor to consider the application. So,
Do you wish us to stay online, sir?
yes, please.
Thank
Yes,
you.
please. That's grand.
Okay, thank you everybody for waiting. The subcommittee have considered this application very carefully, and it's particularly in light that none of the objectors actually attended today, that they have made reference to the written representations. The subcommittee, having considered the amendments to the application, in particular the removal of the licensable entertainment activities other than the seasonal variations, are satisfied that this application does promote the licensing objectives and are going to grant the license with some variations. The variations really relate to the Appendix B, which was generally set out but slightly amended during the subcommittee meeting, and in particular under the supply of alcohol on Sundays, the hours will be from 8 AM until 2300, and for the opening hours for the public, the request was for the Monday to Thursday times to go back to midnight 30, which has been granted. All other requests on that, as that appendix is set out, is granted. There were also consideration of other matters, in particular the conditions, and also before I get onto the conditions, there was discussion relating to the smells, and it was suggested that this was a statutory nuisance matter. Well, under the Licensing Act, nuisance, it can be much more widely interpreted, and they feel that it is a matter that can be considered by the subcommittee. However, given all the information before them today, they don't feel that it's appropriate or proportionate to apply any conditions at this time in respect to that matter. But I'm just raising that just to highlight that it was discussed. With regard to the conditions in the operating schedule, and particularly the amended operating schedule, there are some slight amendments to those. Under condition 1, the authority to sell alcohol, the words "or other personal licence holder" will be removed, as it should be for the designated premises supervisor to authorise the sales. Moving down to condition 12, which refers to the provision of late night refreshments outside areas, that's to be removed because that is now in contravention of the new condition 18, which states that late night food is consumed indoors only, so that condition isn't relevant. Obviously, subsequent conditions will be renumbered. Moving down to the last condition, which is currently condition 26, the words "as far as they have the authority to do so" shall be removed, as I felt that was not an appropriate wording for that condition. The management can supervise and disperse patrons and encourage, or discourage the noise or other public nuisance. So obviously, the fact that you do that lawfully is taken for granted. So other than that, the applicant and anyone making a written representation to the subcommittee has a right of appeal against the decision or the imposition of any condition, and that application for appeal should be made to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of receiving a written notification of this decision. I'll just quickly hand back to Councillor Parker to close the meeting.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mr. DeLu. So I believe that concludes the formal business here this morning, so it just leaves me just to say thank you to everybody that has attended. Thank you to the applicant, Mr. Pratt, and also to Mr. Dermott, and thank you for being so concise and on the point with your presentation, and also to all the officers involved here this morning as well, and of course to my fellow subcommittee members. Thank you one and all. But otherwise, unless there's any further questions or what have you, I will draw the meeting to a close and wish you all a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.